Normally this channel is known for providing hard-hitting news coverage of the weird and wacky and perhaps entertaining and interesting things that are happening around the world of football. But today, I'm going to tell you about something that's going to scare you. Something that, like you thought was a normal bodily function, but it may actually turn into something dangerous. Something that could possibly injure a professional athlete, which means you and we don't stand a chance. And that's the sneeze. Okay, now I don't know if I'm the only person that saw this. I would assume not, because it literally ended up everywhere. There's articles in the BBC, Sky News, People.com for some reason, CBS Sports. The New York Times did a whole expose on it. But a striker for Bolton Wanderers, Victor Adebayo, I don't know exactly how to pronounce it, but I do know that the man was injured because of what was described unanimously as a hefty sneeze. Now, I'm assuming that people are describing it as a hefty sneeze because just admitting that a normal sneeze could possibly injure us would be incredibly dangerous, right? That would start to pull at the fabric of society. We would devolve into anarchy, and it would just turn into, basically whatever is happening in every post-apocalyptic video game, or like The Last of Us or something, because one man was injured by a sneeze, so we're all ticking time bombs until we ourselves sneeze and we are injured. But besides the obvious jokes of the fact that this man, whose thighs are basically the size of my entire torso and is probably, the physical ideal here, he's playing high-level professional football, could injure himself with a sneeze, I actually wanted to figure out what the hell was going on. You were probably at least mildly interested as to why this headline popped up everywhere. First thing to note about this story, it's before an EFL trophy match, right? That ranks somewhere between tiddlywinks for the boys on a Tuesday evening in an actual league match, right? This is not something that was particularly important for Bolton Wanderers. I'm sure you'd rather win the EFL trophy than not, but it is an EFL trophy match against Barrow, right? This is a match that Bolton should be winning blindfolded and backwards, right? They should have no problem being able to win this match. And so if you are going to have, if you're going to be subjected to a particularly painful and adventurous and explosive sneeze that potentially injures you, if you're going to have to sit out a match, a midweek EFL trophy match against Barrows, not a particularly bad match to have to sit out. But they actually, unsurprisingly, wasn't the entire story. It wasn't like, it was just the sneeze itself that it injured him. Shout out to Remy Tooman of the New York Times, who decided to write the expose about this injury and particularly other injuries. And they do point out in the New York Times, they point out the correct title for the EFL trophy, which would be the Bristol Street Motors Trophy, which just makes it, that kind of drives home my initial point even more. But the coach for Bolton, Ian Evett, told the Bolton News as follows, thusly, Victor has been suffering with a nasty back injury and a sneeze set it off. That makes more sense. I mean, look, it's hilarious that we're looking at a dude that's like basically the Hulk here, that is now not able to play competitively at a high level because of a sneeze. But he had been struggling with a back injury already. Specifically, the injury came nearly 2 weeks after he was kneed in the back during a game against Charlton Athletic. Weirdly, Evans said he was okay at the time, but then he had a pretty hefty sneeze. Now Victor I'm saying now this is the best part of this entire article. Now, Victor's a powerful boy, and even his sneezes are powerful. I'm sorry. I mean, look, I know if you're a head coach of a team, right, your job is to gas up the players on your team. Now, do you really need to gas somebody up so hard as to say that even his sneezes are powerful? Like this is Superman, and Superman's sneezes could level a small town or something. Like Victor's a powerful boy, and even his sneezes are powerful. So he took a knee in the back a couple weeks ago. Basically, it hurt, but he felt fine to keep playing. And then he sneezed, and this is where the word hefty, I'm assuming this is where the hefty sneeze phrase came from for all of those articles around the world, because the coach actually said the phrase hefty sneeze. That came along and basically exacerbated the injury. There's your big word of the day. Apparently, he sneezed and literally felt a bit of a crack in between his ribs. That's a nightmare scenario, but I also understand that's pretty scary. They don't know exactly what it is either. Like at the time this article was written, is a couple days ago, they actually don't know what the injury was. He felt the crack in his ribs, and they basically had to go in for tests or like to figure out what a timeline was for him to recover from this hefty sneeze. It is possible that the previous injury was made worse by the sneeze in such a way that Adebayo could end up missing multiple weeks because of a sneeze. So maybe now I feel bad for making so much fun of all of this. I really don't. I feel like even if I was Adebayo, I would have to be laughing at this. There's no way you're not laughing at this. This is fucking hilarious, right? This is a professional footballer who got hurt with a sneeze. But where the New York Times set itself apart, and the reason I'm on this article more so than any other, is they actually got a doctor from the Hospital of Special Surgery in New York, Dr. Jordan Metzel, and he provided insight onto what could potentially go wrong in a sneezing scenario, for lack of a better term here. He said that the sneeze is more likely to worsen an underlying injury, and that's where most sneeze-related injuries come from, which, there you go. Put it at ease. Right, you are very likely, even if you're going to get hurt from a sneeze, to not be hurt if you don't have an underlying condition already. But, he says it does happen, including a patient of his who had ruptured a lumbar disc via sneeze. What the hell? Our bodies are trying to attack us. This doctor, who the New York Times has contacted to provide insight on a player injuring himself with a sneeze, said that they once had a patient who ruptured a disc with a sneeze. Did they blow out all the windows in their apartment? Like, what? What? But don't think about holding the sneeze. They make that clear. Trying to hold a sneeze can also worsen the injury. He advised patients to be careful when they sneeze. Well, I don't know what the hell that means either, right? But I had imagined that Pep Guardiola is sitting somewhere in the corner of a room taking notes about how to tell Erling Haaland and the rest of his marionette, tiki-taka monsters how to sneeze appropriately so they don't accidentally rupture a disc in the middle of the season. And I suppose that if you're Victor Adebayo, you should be thankful that you didn't actually blow out your back while sneezing. And look, I shout out to the doctor here, who even acknowledges how stupid all this is. It sounds ridiculous, but it really is a real thing we see, adding, it hurts like hell. So, sorry, Victor. Victor, I didn't mean it. And I'm sorry if you are actually in pain. I'd recommend some Advil, or if the doctor thinks it's worth it, maybe something stronger. You can find doctors in West Virginia to give $500 to something stronger if you're really up for it, right? But I would caution against that. I've heard it comes with some warning labels. But if it really does hurt like hell, then I can't wait for Manchester City and Real Madrid and Barcelona to get, like sneezing coaches, the same way that you would have like a yoga coach to help, your team align their chakras, a word that I'm now fond of using, right? You need a sneezing coach to teach these guys to be able to sneeze properly so they're more in flow with the game, right? We need no sneezing during the rondos. That would be a problem. Just for the fun of the game here, the New York Times just decided to elongate this article a bit more with literally just random injuries. And it turns out Adebayo is not the only athlete to have been injured and out for significant time because of a sneeze. I did not know this, but Sammy Sosa, the baseball player, a very high-level baseball player, strained his back ligaments by sneezing and didn't play for 15 days. They also list other bizarre injuries, from Lindsey Vonn being hospitalized, breaking up a fight between her dogs, Michael Jordan severing a tendon in his finger trying to cut a cigar, and an outfielder for the Toronto Blue Jays in professional baseball ended up with cuts and carpet burns after he tried to escape spiders that had appeared in a nightmare in 1990. And then, for some reason, they also list the fact that in 1996, a defensive lineman in the NFL named Bruce Walker was wounded in the chest while playing catch with a knife. To which my response is, fucking obviously. Like, all these other ones are a bit haphazard and somebody having just the worst nightmare you could possibly imagine. But if you are playing catch with a knife, I mean, a chest wound is inevitable. I just feel like that doesn't rise to the level of absurdity of sneezing yourself onto injured reserve. But that is currently where Victor Adebayo is. But remember, it only happens to people like Victor because even his sneezes are powerful. And that's just powerful emotional support from the manager.